Podfix.
I haven't been so well since my resurrection for humor, but here it is. I've been listening to my favorite podcast, Mouse and Weens. Well, get the...
Mouse and weens, and a 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 mouse and weens, mouse and weens, and a mouse and weens,
Weens. Hi. Your nickname is so fun to say because it kind of already makes you go wee. Wee. I like it. It's Mouse and Weens.
Then it brings out your wrinkles. Whoa.
You got more of the wrinkle
Not
genes
me.
than I did. You guys, we're sisters. That's why we're looking at wrinkles. You've always said that. You have the dad wrinkles. I got the
You're
mom.
not supposed to back it up and say...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're supposed to say, no, that's not true.
No wrinkles at all. You're perfect. You're beautiful.
It's not true at all.
No, never. I'm hiding behind my microphone because I had oral surgery. This is Joelle. I'm
Okay,
Mouse.
let's see it.
I'm the mom one.
You had oral what?
Oral surgery.
Joelle.
I had my implant removed. Ready? I'm going to flash it really fast for only those of you on YouTube. Ready? Okay. I'm missing a tooth.
Pop it out a little more. Let's see it.
No,
Come
I
on.
don't want to. I don't
That
want to.
was
I'm
nothing.
very embarrassed about it. Look, this
Why?
episode is all about authenticity, being who you really are. I'm not
Good.
quite there yet. I guess
Okay,
on the
let's see
queer
just one more
scale
time.
of being authentic, I'm not quite there. No, you can rewind it if you really want to see it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'm Joelle. I'm Mouse. I'm the mom one down in San Diego.
I'm Weens. I'm Julianne. I'm up in LA and I am in the film business, entertainment world.
Yes, she is. Look at her.
Done.
She is. And we have a special guest for you today who she met and is friends with Allison Arngrim, who we interviewed before. So go back to those episodes if you want to hear the mention. But Steve is an amazing person. I researched him heavily and was like flabbergasted. Does anyone say that word anymore?
Yes.
By all of his accomplishments, but just by his life story, you know, the path that he's taken. So you guys will be interested to learn about him because he is a gay reverend minister in a Christian church. Okay, first of all, that's just one thing. But kind of what launched him into fame is that he was one of the first patients ever to have AIDS, and he was reached out to by Tammy Faye Bakker of the famous evangelistic couple, Jim and Tammy Faye. And she interviewed him, and it was kind of a life-changing
Wait.
moment.
Can I just,
Sure.
He wasn't the first person to have AIDS, but he was the first person to have a drug that
Antiviral
he was like
medicine.
the ground zero.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So he really was a game changer in a lot of people's lives in the LGBTQ community, especially in the 80s during the time of AIDS and HIV. So we are going to talk to him. He is a survivor, and his story is amazing. He has gone on to be featured in so many publications. This interview with Tammy Faye kind of launched him into talk shows. He was written about in multiple books. There are documentaries, and he is in them. He has a new film coming out centered around kind of his interview as well. We'll talk about that. And we even found out
Jessica Chastain is in it. Very famous actress.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. Andrew Garfield. He was at a presidential prayer meeting in 1993 with President Clinton, Vice President Gore. He was invited to that and spoke with Clinton. I wrote down his thing. We didn't get to talk about it in our interview, but Clinton asked him about a vaccine, and Steve said there is no vaccine. It's mostly about education. And that was referenced later, a month later, in President Clinton's speech on World AIDS Day. So it was very pivotal stuff. People kind of know about this man that Tammy Faye interviewed that kind of changed the world of AIDS activism. And he has since gone on to help in a million different AIDS organizations. He's gotten awards left and right.
Smithsonian.
And he's got, stuff featured in the Smithsonian Institute. So it's kind of a cool story.
And a movie being made right now about his life with very prominent actors and actresses.
That's right.
It's amazing.
Very
and
much.
he's touched so many lives he's helped people who are dying.
Yep.
And
he's a chaplain. He's
just a beautiful person.
still performing sermons virtually for people and very involved in the community and just a wonderful person. And Julianne's lucky
And the
to
Gay Men's Choir of Los Angeles.
That's right. And she's lucky to have him as a friend, and I'm lucky to meet him by proxy and hope to in real life real soon. So anyway, let's hear this wonderful interview with Steve Pieters, everybody. Here we go.
Our friend, I love you, Steve. I'm just going to start right there and say you're beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm so glad that you could do this. We are so excited to have you today.
Absolutely.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm so glad that you asked.
Yay.
I'm thrilled and all that. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, so reasons why Steve is important. I'm sure we'll do a little intro before this, but you have an amazing story. I spent all today. I feel like I'm back in college. I crammed for this interview. I learned everything there is to know about you. And
Oh my God.
no,
we know
with lots
everything.
of gaps. You have to
Okay.
fill in lots. But oh my goodness. The first thing I want to say, my first impression, I love your hair. I love your fun smile. And you seem like a fun person. And from what Julianne's told me, you really are. And
Oh, well,
I love this.
life is short. Let's have fun.
That's right. I know. So I heard you sing a song, and a lovely song on your Facebook page all about your kind of ordeal. But why don't you start us with that? What was your
Okay.
song about? Not that you have to sing it again, but
medical anomaly song.
yes.
Yeah, right. Well, back in the 90s, I was, people in my church were talking about how, oh, you're such a miracle. The story is such a miracle and all of that. And in the medical world, the doctors would say, oh, well, you're a real anomaly, and so I was thinking about this and thinking about it, and I thought, and out popped these lyrics to an old Gilbert and Sullivan song. And I wrote them down, and I've sung them for all kinds of different audiences and online and offline. And my doctor recorded it on her phone so she could play it for her colleagues at the NIH and the CDC. And so apparently Dr. Fauci asks my doctor, Dr. Levine, after me through the years. And so
Really?
she's still alive. Yeah.
Wow.
Still a medical anomaly. Yeah.
You are. That is amazing. Can we go into that a little bit? Why are you a medical anomaly?
Well,
Or Joe, tell me, Joelle, maybe you should lead this. She's
Oh, no.
really has it all
Anyway, it
formed.
goes. It's fine. I just wanted to I love the song, and I just thought it was the perfect image of you as someone who's living life and enjoying life and still enjoying all the things you've always enjoyed, being musical theater, entertaining. But then you are a medical anomaly, and yet here you are inspiring others. So that's a perfect way to talk about it, and to hear that Fauci is interested in your story too. But why? Yeah, why should our listeners know your story? It's amazing.
Well, I first got sick with what we now know as HIV disease or AIDS in 1982. Not even a year, like 7 months after the first published report of AIDS. I started getting sick with it, and I was diagnosed in 1982 with GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency, and that's what they were calling AIDS back then. They didn't know enough about the disease to even be able to give me a prognosis at that point. But as time marched on, we all could see that everybody who got AIDS died, right? And in 82 and 83, I had hepatitis, cytomegalovirus, pneumonia, mononucleosis, herpes, shingles, a variety of fungal infections, including a fungal infection on my foot, which caused these huge painful blisters. And one of the dermatologists I went to trying to find a treatment for it said that, oh, he hadn't seen it since he was a medic in the South Pacific in World War II, and that it was a fungal infection that came from walking barefoot in sheep dung in New Zealand.
Okay, so
Steve,
how was your trip to New Zealand?
Yeah.
No, I never went. I
went.
never stepped in sheep dung.
wow.
I did, however, step in some standing water at the gym.
Wow. So your body was just, it didn't know how to deal with anything. Its immune system was just shutting down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people with AIDS back then picked up all kinds of strange things that nobody ever saw in healthy young people before.
Right.
And that was, that was one of them. So I was sick all through 83, and then they came up with this diagnosis called AIDS. They hadn't discovered the virus yet, so there was no test for it. But the diagnosis of AIDS was defined by one of 5 specific diseases, and I didn't have any of them. So I had GRID, which was AIDS, but I couldn't be diagnosed with full-blown AIDS until April of 1984. I was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma and Kaposi sarcoma. And Kaposi sarcoma is what gave me the diagnosis of full-blown AIDS finally. And I was given by one of the nurses. The doctors never gave me a prognosis. Well, that's not true. They said, one of them said, well, you might live 18 months to 2 years. But a nurse read my chart and said that they didn't expect me to live to see 1985.
Oh my
That
God.
was 8 months away. So I was given 8 months to live.
Wow.
How does that feel when someone gives you, I know this is a basic question, but were you in a state of panic? Were you in a state of acceptance?
No. God,
Denial.
no, not even denial.
Yeah.
I was scared to death. I mean, I just was terrified. And I was scared of how sick I saw other people with AIDS being. And I didn't know a lot of people who had AIDS, but I saw other patients at the hospital and I could see how sick they were. And I thought, oh my God, that's my future. And everybody that I heard of who was diagnosed with AIDS died. And so I thought, at the age of, 32, that my life was over and
32.
I wouldn't have a future.
Oh my gosh.
And this is something, it was the early days of being diagnosed, and was there so much shame associated because it was a gay disease. And we've talked about a lot of your, past growing up and the time that you did. Yeah. It was a rough time being gay. And what year, when were you born? Do you mind talking about that? Oh, no,
not at all. I was born in 1952. So I am now approaching 69 rapidly.
Yeah. You look great though. You look great. You really do.
I don't even dye my hair. It's still blonde,
That's crazy.
Like brown. Yeah.
But you do kind of have an Einstein look. I like it. Which
Thank you.
we wrote it down. Julianne said we have to be sure to ask him about Einstein. So what is the connection? You were born in that. So your dad, there was a connection there somewhere.
My dad was a math teacher. And he was a math teacher at Phillips Academy, Andover, as well as being the varsity wrestling coach there. And they would give faculty at Andover a year's sabbatical when they were fairly young still. And so my dad's decided to spend his sabbatical at Princeton, where he had done his undergraduate and graduate degrees. And he went back to Princeton and worked in the math department at Princeton. And I was
on his sabbatical.
Yeah. So
he loved his job.
He was very unhappy if he didn't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
Gee, could I be related?
I was gonna say, I know we should do. When you look at his bio, you'll see.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so I was 2. And Dad would take me for walks in the park, and we would run into this old man with white frizzy hair out to here, and and all of that, and this old man would lean down you know, talk to me, or and then sometimes we would sit on the park bench, and he would love to take me on his lap and bounce me up and down on his knees, and you know, I had no idea who Albert Einstein was, but it was Albert Einstein.
That's
You know,
amazing.
Crazy.
a mentor of my father's, and Einstein was approaching the end of his life, and he was retired and would take a walk in the park, and you know, I was too. Dad was proud of me, and he said, "Oh, here's my little Stevie," you know.
So he was friends with your dad. They would just
Yeah.
chat and
Well, I would say more mentor and mentee,
yeah.
you know.
Wow.
Part of the
Yeah.
same department. That's amazing. I had
That's
a
amazing.
college friend whose great aunt, I think, went on a date with him. Does that line up?
Really?
Yeah, Chris Bonner. He
Wow.
was at UCSD. Anyway, side note.
Wow.
So he was a living, breathing guy, and we have proof. You sat on his
Yeah.
lap like
I'm here.
Santa.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
very smart Santa.
So so speaking of your dad, I want to kind of hear your story of what it was like growing up in your house. How did your parents, were they lovely people? How did they accept you coming out? First of all, when did you know you were gay?
Oh, well, I've known as far back as I can remember that boys held an extra charge for me, but I found a letter that my father wrote to his parents when I was about 18 months old, and Dad was the varsity wrestling coach, as I mentioned, and every year they would have the wrestling team down for dinner, and so this year when I was 18 months old, they came in through the door, and Dad said in this letter, "We're so excited because little Stevie said his first words today. We had the wrestling team down for dinner, and as they came in through the door, Stevie sat up in his high chair and said, just as clearly as could be, 'Boys, boys, boys!'"
That's amazing. I love it. Oh
And
my
so-
God.
So yeah,
Early.
So the writing
Early.
was on the wall.
early.
Yeah.
And
I
when
just read, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm taking a class right now in psychology for lifespan development. And it was a whole article about people around 3 years old know what gender they're going to be associated with the rest of their life. So a lot of people don't know. I didn't know that.
Sure.
And so early. Yeah.
And
3 years old, yeah.
you know, I learned to be I mean, obviously I wasn't ashamed of it at that point, but I learned to be ashamed of my feelings because of the you know, how I heard the grown-ups talking about homos, you know, and one time Dad took me to when I was maybe 5 or 6, and he took me to the wrestling meet on Saturday afternoon, and the weigh-in before the wrestling meet happened, if the boys didn't come in right under the weight that they were supposed to be wrestling at, Dad had them take off their clothes and weigh in naked, and I was like,
Very interesting.
and I asked my dad about it afterwards, and I must have said something about how amazing they looked or something. I wish I knew, but I do remember my dad going, "We don't talk about that," and he was obviously ashamed. And you know, there have been studies done of you know, fathers and gay sons, and there's a lot of thought that fathers see that there's something different in their gay sons early, and they can sense this difference, and they're embarrassed by it, and they are, you know, oftentimes they start shaming the other person, the little boy, because they feel ashamed of their son.
Especially at that time. Oh my gosh. There was
Yeah.
no communication about this.
No
Yeah.
support.
There were no images. I mean, I thought I was the only homosexual in the world for
Aw.
the longest time. We had no Will and Grace, no Ellen DeGeneres, no nothing
Internet.
anywhere, no internet, nothing.
Mhm.
So
God, how isolating. Oh my
I went
God.
to the library at Andover and looked up homosexuality in the library card catalog. Remember those card catalogs?
Dewey Decimal.
Young
No.
Dewey Decimal System. But I looked up homosexuality and I found a book in the library that talked about it, and it was a psychology book, and it talked about perverts and deviants, and how perverts and deviants who were into same-sex coupling were destined to hang out in back alleys and be murdered and stabbed and and stuff like that, and I thought, oh my God, is that what awaits me? So I was aware of being a little too effeminate for an Andover boy. I would literally wear rulers up my sleeves to keep my wrists stiff because I thought
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's so hard
God.
not to be able to be authentic, not be yourself. That's so tough.
Right.
I mean, I guess we all do it to a certain degree because, kids are kids and society is that certain way. But wow, that's so tough. Now, and you were raised in a church environment too. So then there's probably an extra element of shame and should. And
Sure. Well, I was raised in a congregational church, and my parents were Presbyterians, and my grandparents were Presbyterian missionaries to Korea. My uncle was a Presbyterian pastor, and my parents were very involved in the church, and so when I was about 15, I went to the pastor of our church and had an appointment with him, and I sat down in his office, and I don't know how I ever summoned up the courage to do it, but I said, I think I may be gay. I think I may be a homosexual. And he jumped up out of his chair and started pacing, looking at his library like he was going to find a book that would tell him how to handle this. And, and he was like totally freaked. And he said, I don't really know anything about this. I think it's probably just a phase that some boys go through. And don't tell your parents. They would be so upset if they knew,
So now you're extra isolated.
Right.
Don't
back in the closet after you summoned the courage to talk about it too.
He said, don't tell anybody.
Wow. Wow.
So how long did it take you to finally come out and talk about it?
Well, I went to college at Northwestern and studied musical theater and all that. And I performed in a lot of shows, did summer stock and that whole.
And still doing it. The Gay Men's Chorus of
Los Angeles.
LA. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I had good friends we used to work with that do the San Diego version too. And they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
San Diego chorus is great. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I drank all through college, and I got the first year out of college, I just drank my shame. I was so ashamed, and I isolated myself, and I just sat in my apartment and drank. And my parents sent me a check every month, so that was wonderful. But I finally realized that I had to get honest about being gay if I was going to be able to get sober and stay sober.
What year was this? About college years?
1975. I graduated from college in 74, so 75. And so I met a group of gay sober men, and there weren't a lot of resources for us back then, but there was a church that encouraged, not just encouraged, but affirmed LGBT people for being who they are. And indeed, the church was made up primarily of LGBT people. It was called the Metropolitan Community Church, MCC. And
this is in Illinois?
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. And I met a group of gay men and lesbians who were happy and in loving relationships. And oh my God, this is possible. And so I dove in, and I became a gay activist, and I quickly realized that I wanted to become a minister and minister in the gay community with MCC, and I went to seminary, and I was the only openly gay student at the seminary at the time.
Wow.
And
Were people accepting of that?
some. The faculty were pretty supportive, but the students, the other students, a number of them had problems with me. Some were very supportive, and I'm still friends with a couple of them. But there were students who just were convinced that it was a sinful lifestyle that was going to send me to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And,
which is still such a prominent thought, you
oh,
know.
yeah.
I have very conservative friends that I've gotten into that conversation with, and it's tough to
see. That's crazy. It's so weird being in LA. I think people generally are of the mindset that, I don't know. How do you feel here, Steve? Because I don't run into people.
No,
Yeah.
I feel very safe and comfortable here, and that doesn't deny the fact that there are, hate crimes that go on all the time with gay men being beaten or lesbians being beaten, or especially trans people.
Right.
A lot of trans women are murdered.
Murdered.
And an inordinate number of trans women are murdered.
Is this happening in what areas? All over the place?
Well, I think it probably happens more if, there are some trans women who, to support their transition, prostitute themselves, even before their transition, but when they're dressed as a woman. And they prostitute themselves, and the men who pick them up discover that they're not quite all woman. They have a little extra, and they murder them. I mean, I've seen that happen with gay men too. When I was a pastor in Hartford, Connecticut, one of the men, I knew of 2 murders of gay men that were both, men who'd picked up another man in a park or somewhere and brought them home. And when the other man discovered what the host wanted to do, they went into a rage and killed him.
Oh God.
Gosh.
So.
Yeah. It's still happening. It's always crazy to me, but then it's not crazy after this whole Trump wackiness. You start to see true colors.
That gave permission.
Yeah.
More.
Can you do, Steve, will you do something that is a 101 course? Can you just say, like, do you know, like, binary? Binary means, and trans in a way that will be the 101 for people listening.
Okay, trans people are people who believe that, or who know that they were born in the wrong body, the wrong gender. They know deep inside at an early age that, if they're a little boy, that they are meant to be a girl, and girls who want to be boys, it's the same thing. And as you grow older, as trans people grow older, and become independent, and sometimes the parents are okay with trans children, but generally when they get to be older is when they really are able to go through a transition and do the surgery. But before the surgery, they have, I don't know if this is still true, but there was a mandatory living, you had to live a year as a woman before you could get the surgery, or as a man before you could get the surgical procedures. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, you're socialized to be a man, and yet, you're a woman. And so when you become a woman, you're still socialized as a man, and, it's rough.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
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 I'm also, all I have to talk about is school these days, because that's all I'm doing. But in my Native American studies, they did not care who was what. Men lived together
Yeah.
people dressed as women who were men, and it was no problem in the Native American community as far back as
I
they
love that.
have found, and a bunch of different tribes in Africa. And
Yeah.
so we're so strange here in the
Yeah.
colonized European.
The Judeo-Christian tradition is full of homophobia. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it dates way back centuries, you know.
And we're no longer saying homosexual, but gay. Can you tell us why?
Homosexual is a very clinical term, in my opinion, and it describes a person's sex orientation, sexual orientation. And being gay is so much more than that. You know, being gay is accepting your homosexuality and making it a part of your whole identity. And you know, I had a friend back in Hartford who's long since died from AIDS, but when I was in Hartford, he was a very brash, blunt kind of guy, and he used to say that there was a real difference between homosexuals and gay men, and I was like, what? And yeah, and he would point to a guy who was like deeply ashamed of himself, or you know, just not being out and proud, and he would say, that's a homosexual, and this is a gay man, who the one who is proud and who integrated his sexuality into his personality and his life. So
it's
that's
more
an
of a
interesting
lifestyle
distinction. Mm.
And then
Yeah.
queer is kind of a all-encompassing,
yeah,
maybe this, maybe that. It doesn't describe it specifically as I understand it, but I'm not as in the community. Is that
no,
true?
queer is considered to be a more generic term, actually. Oh, God, I should have turned this off. Sorry.
That's all right.
That's
We do it
okay.
all the time.
Anyway, yes, queer is a more generic term for some people that describes lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. We're different, and so we're queer.
Right.
And queer was an epithet that was used against us, and so we have owned it.
Nice.
And made it our own and transformed it into a term of pride.
Right. It's a positive thing.
Yeah, it's a positive thing. And straight people can be queer.
There you go. Yeah.
You know.
Right.
How
well,
is that?
when you think
Can you
about the whole spectrum too, right? There's a spectrum of
There's a spectrum of sexualities.
How can straight people want to be queer? I would like to be fabulous.
Well, I think that in some ways you are queer, Julianne.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got on
I
all
don't know
my.
well enough to know whether you are, but
She's also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm right up there.
Queer is just like, you know, I'm different, and I'm celebrate how different I am from the rest of the world, and you know, I'm proud of who I am, and I don't care who knows how weird I am or how queer I am or whatever word you want to use, but it's like just being proud of being, you know, radically different than your colleagues at work or something.
The average Joe or Jane. So this brings, so now we're back at, you have come out, you're in college.
No, I'm past college.
You're past college. Okay. This is when you are a part of the community of your church. And what happens
75, 76.
Okay.
Well, I had this spiritual awakening that was just a huge change, because I had basically rejected God and rejected all of that religious crap, you know, and all.
Wow.
And now I was part of a faith community, a church, a Christian church, and I'll never forget it. But on October 17th, 1976, I was sitting in church after the sermon and before communion, and I had this, what some people might call a white light experience, where I suddenly realized with a clarity that I had never known before that I was supposed to pursue a calling to the ministry.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just knew it. I was sure of it. And everything felt peaceful.
Oh.
Everything felt right.
I have goosebumps. That's great.
Yeah.
And
And
so
so
you do, yeah.
I did pursue it. And whereas my theater career after college and prior to this consisted of people slamming doors in my face all the time, when I decided I wanted to pursue this calling, doors opened. They
Ah.
flew open. And I was accepted
it.
to the Masters of Divinity program at McCormick Seminary at the University of Chicago. And I was just, and I loved it. I loved seminary. I loved learning.
Were your parents ecstatic at this choice?
My parents didn't know at first. When I went to seminary, they just thought, oh, he's had a spiritual awakening.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
he'd come over to our side, at last, and all of that.
Oh.
And so I came out to them actually when I went to visit them on my first spring break from seminary. And I went to see them and I stayed with them. And every morning we watched Phil Donahue, the talk show.
Yeah.
He's the one who taught Oprah.
He's a great guy. I really like him.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
So anyway, this one day I was there with my parents, and the guest was Anita Bryant, who, for your listeners who might not know, well, first of all, she was a Miss America runner-up who had a singing career and peddled orange juice. She was the orange juice lady on TV, and Florida orange juice specifically. And Miami is in Dade County, Florida, and Dade County had passed an LGBT rights ordinance, and she was incensed, and she mounted a campaign to repeal the gay rights ordinance in Miami, and she became the symbol of there was a huge amount of friction going on in this country around gay rights and LGBT rights. And, there were victories here, there, and everywhere in surprising places sometimes.
Florida.
And Florida. And then fights to repeal the rights, and Anita Bryant led the charge.
Wow.
And
was she the first real famous person on that side? Anti? Or were there several more?
I'm sure there were others before.
Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
I mean, this was when gay rights was new. Stonewall, the big riot that started the whole gay rights movement, was just in 1969. And this was 1976. So not all that much later. And so people, actually, Anita Bryant had the effect of bringing people out of the closet in droves because people were so incensed.
And that worked against her.
Harvey Milk, the San Francisco supervisor, the first openly gay person elected to office in this country, he was saying, we got to come out. The way to fight this is for all of us to come out so that people can see, oh my God, my sister is gay. Or, oh my God, my brother's trans, or
it's like the Me Too movement,
put a human face, the Me Too movement, exactly. And so Anita Bryant and Harvey Milk, they galvanized this whole surge of hundreds of thousands of people coming out in the 70s. And the 70s was a great time to be gay. I mean, the parades, the demonstrations, the bars, the baths, discos.
We were in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And
Castro
was amazing.
We were living in our suburban bubble about 30 minutes away, but little kids. But still, yeah.
But we got to see a lot of the fun and
we would go to San Francisco on the weekends in early 80s, and then we had Aunt Karen's brother was gay. He was, with his dude the whole time, and it was always in our life around. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was happening.
I was coming out. That I was telling you the coming out story.
Right.
Anita Bryant was on Phil Donahue, and I couldn't help but make comments like, "Oh, that woman," or God, she's the Antichrist, or I mean, I made my displeasure with her known, and it was obvious. And that night after dinner, we were sitting around the dining room table, and my father asked me, "Do you think you might be a homosexual?"
Wow.
And I went,
Pass the potatoes?
yes. I said yes, and
Wow.
my mother started crying, and my father reached across the table and took my hand and said, "You're my son, and I love you, and nothing can change that."
That's so great.
That's beautiful.
And after I'd gone back to Chicago, he wrote me this beautiful handwritten letter saying much the same thing.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, do you think your mom reacted out of shame, or was it fear for you, or just knowing that your path was a little bit harder? Did she come to accept it, or?
Well, she told me that she had read a letter. She had been going through my stuff in my bedroom and found a letter that a gay friend of mine had written to me saying, "You just got to come out,
Oh, okay.
it's great out here, and the water's fine." And she knew at that point. And, mothers sometimes just sense those things.
Oh, yeah.
Just like fathers do, and mother was from the school of, "Oh my God, I caused it." I'm
moms do that.
and a lot of issues, and so I worked very hard at helping her understand that it wasn't her fault, that it wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't a matter of fault. It was a matter of joyously embracing who I am. And she never quite got there. I mean, she expressed her love for me, and she gave verbal support to me and all of that, but it was hard for her. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that was probably
Joelle
right.
Relates.
Well, as a mom with 3 kids who,
Not Joelle.
they're on great paths, but every little stray, you do worry as a mom. Is he being too aggressive? Is he not caring about people enough? Every little thing. So yeah, and you do kind of
I'm sorry. I remember a mom just saying, "Well, I just want your life to be easy," and it would, certain things would just, moms want their kids to walk through life with ease, not being ridiculed or shamed. And
that was definitely
Exactly.
on my mother's mind, on my mother's heart, was that I was going to be destined to be very lonely, and she was very upset that I would never provide her with a daughter-in-law and grandchildren.
Oh. Were you the only son?
No, I had an older brother, just the one sibling, and he was married, and his first wife died after 2 years after she gave birth to a daughter who is my niece Jen, and Jen and I are very close to this day. But anyway, then he remarried, and neither of his wives, the first wife died from complications of an automobile accident, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so neither wife really wanted to take care of mom the way that mom had taken care of her mother-in-law. And so she got kind of bitter and angry resentful about that. Yeah.
That's rough. Yeah.
A lot of issues.
And she always thought I would be a really good father. And I always wanted to be a father. And but back in the 70s, you didn't hear a lot about gay couples adopting children or having children.
Right.
So we watched your Tammy Faye interview.
Oh, you did?
And in that interview, you talked about people now are starting to adopt gay couples are adopting children now. So it must have just been happening mid-'80s, or?
That was, Tammy Faye's interview with me was 1985.
Wow. So it was happening.
Yeah. So it was like 9 years later.
So how did you come Oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
How did you come to be on her show? Because now, yeah, how did you? You're kind of famous, Steve. I just
You
have to tell the
are.
viewers out there. And this
It's
is just
happening
one.
more. And when the feature film comes out in September, about Tammy Faye, with Jessica Chastain as Tammy Faye, and Randy Havens from the TV series Stranger Things is playing me.
No one's ever heard of that, Steve. No.
This is
He's
so
playing you. I can't believe
exciting.
No.
So he was the AV teacher, right? I'm just looking at the picture.
He was. I think he was the science teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He ran the AV club. He was the science teacher,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's attractive.
No, well, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Hi,
Well,
Steve.
all right. So we're jumping ahead, but
Yeah.
you fill in the gaps to how you got to Tammy Faye from kind of coming out, and then we need to talk about the movie.
I mean, we talked about my getting sick in '82 and being sick through, and what in 1985, when I did live to see 1985, my doctor invited me to be patient number 1 on the very first antiviral they ever tried against HIV. It was an experimental chemotherapy, and I was the first patient to go on the drug. And within 6 weeks, my KS lesions had disappeared, and my lymphoma, stage 4 lymphoma, had gone into complete remission.
Wow.
And so they put 89 other people on the drug around the country. It killed a large percentage of them. And it was a rugged drug, and it very nearly killed me. And I did have a near-death experience at the end of October of 1985. And it was...
Can you tell me about, my favorite thing in the world is near-death experiences.
She has watched
love them.
over 300. What? Wow. Okay.
5 times. Yeah.
You made me throw my scarf 5 times. What can you tell? Just
God.
one of the most profound ones.
Sure. Well, the
happened?
first one was perhaps the most profound because I'd never had one before, and I was terrified of dying alone, and the Suramin destroyed my adrenal glands, and they didn't figure that out until it was almost too late. And they called me to come into the hospital immediately. And I was sleeping 22 hours a day and losing weight I didn't have to lose.
Oh, God.
And I was just a skeleton with skin, And they brought me into the hospital, and before they gave me the drug I needed to deal with the adrenal insufficiency, they did all these tests in the red blanket room, the triage room, and they tried to draw blood from my left arm, and my blood wasn't flowing, and they said, "Pump your hand, Steve. Pump your hand to get the blood flowing." And I looked down on the scene, and I wondered why he wasn't pumping his hand like they were telling him to. And then
So you were floating over yourself. You were in the room looking down.
I heard them say, "Oh my God, his blood pressure when I came in was 50/30, and it dropped rapidly and then disappeared." And I went, whoo. I remember the feeling of leaving my body, and I was at peace like I've never known. That peace that I felt when I was called to the ministry was just a fraction of the peace that I felt. I finally understood everything about myself and the world, and I didn't have it. I felt whole. I felt whole, and I was surrounded by loving beings, kind of loving shadows, and there was this great light, and one of the shadows spoke to me and said, "Steve Areno," and I realized it was the mailman who'd brought us our mail when I was little, and he used to call me Steve, and then I was back in my body, and I was pissed.
Oh, I've heard that. Okay, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Was anyone, so they were beings and shadows. Okay, can you bring back anything that you felt, what is the purpose of life? What are we doing here? Or was it just in a flash you knew
No,
everything?
no. I realized that dying alone was irrelevant because we're never alone, for one thing. We're surrounded by loving beings
From the other side?
from the other side.
Okay.
And the love that we have experienced in life with people, whether they're still with us or not, that love is what is eternal. And that is what we carry with us when we leave our bodies. And I realized too that the most important thing in life is relationship and really looking in each other's eyes and seeing each other. And that was what I learned, and that there was nothing to fear in dying.
So you are not afraid at all?
Not afraid anymore.
I hear that from
Wow.
everyone who's had the near-death experience. It's amazing.
I think when I was in the hospital room, our dad, Steve, died in 2000. And I was in the room with him when he passed. And he did have a moment of, waking back up. He died of kidney cancer.
Yeah.
But he had a moment of clarity right before he passed. And he almost sat up and said, "We all just love each other. We all just love each other." And I really do think he saw something and came back to pass that message on. And then he passed. But so I'm all
So love
verklempt.
is all there is. The Beatles
It really
were
is.
right.
It's true.
Right.
It's true.
Wow.
Wow.
How have you carried that? Is it something that is deeply within you now, or do you forget?
No, I forget, but
You're human.
I'm human, but I think I'm a much more loving human being than I used to be.
Did you change anything when you came back from that in your life? That was, some people are vegetarian, some people volunteer more, some people, so it wasn't like that. Okay.
No, it was more, I paid attention to the people I loved more.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And I valued them more.
And you were
That's
a
amazing.
chaplain in a hospital too.
Right.
And-
Well, first I got well. I mean,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
We're jumping all over.
So I was in complete remission, but I was dying because of the toxic side effects of the drug. And that's when I went on the Tammy Faye Bakker show.
Okay.
2 weeks after that near-death experience.
Wow.
So she was already calling you a miracle.
Yeah.
This was a miracle that you survived through this drug, and your cancer went into full remission after 4th stage. That's crazy.
How did she find you? What was?
Well, apparently she decided that she and her husband, Jim Bakker, decided that they wanted to have a gay man with AIDS on the show for her to interview. They didn't think that it would be good for the interview to be on the main PTL, the flagship show. They had me come on. Well, they decided they would have someone come on the Tammy Faye's little talk show called Tammy's House Party. So her producer searched. They really wanted to be the first televangelist to ever interview a gay man with AIDS.
Okay.
And so she did. And so her producer called all over the Southeast and the Eastern Seaboard and couldn't find anybody who was willing to come on the show and talk to her.
Wow. Why was that? It was
because televangelists had a reputation for hating gay people, and AIDS was God's punishment against us for being gay.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a real dynamic of televangelism, and conservative Christianity in general. So anyway, they wanted to have a more affirming interview than what other televangelists might do. So anyway, they couldn't find anybody. They finally called the AIDS Project in Atlanta, and the fella who was the executive director there, Ken South, Reverend Ken South, had been a parishioner of mine in Atlanta, and we were still in touch, and he referred them to me. And so the producer, he called me first to ask me if it was okay to give my contact info, and I said sure. So that's how it happened.
Were you nervous? Did you have to grapple with this idea of going on?
In talking to them, I told the producer that I did not want to have to debate homosexuality in the Bible. That I would be clear that I'm gay and I'm proud and I'm a gay Christian.
Mm-hmm. How do you think she handled it? And everyone should go to YouTube to watch this.
Absolutely.
Interview.
I'm going to link everything in our show notes too.
But, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
did she genuinely care? I guess is my question.
Yeah. I'm really clear that she did. And she was very genuine in her caring and concern. And, she asked a lot of what you and I might consider to be stupid questions, or just like, oh, come
Basic.
on, really?
But it was the 80s, yeah.
But it was the 80s and people didn't know, especially her audience.
Yeah.
And so she spent the first 15 minutes talking about being gay. And, a reporter recently told me that he suspected that she was dealing with issues in her own marriage in trying to feel me out about, how can you be sure you're gay? And, maybe you just haven't given women a fair try. And
was her husband? Did he come out?
His husband was reputed to have, no, he did not come out, but her husband was reputed to have, rumored to have homosexual liaisons.
This was Jimmy Bakker and Jim Bakker, sorry. What, something came out in the news recently. Did they have, this might have been someone else, the pool boy that they were having secret sex. That's somebody else though. We won't go into that.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't them, I don't think.
So, I have to tell you a quick story though about the whole, Jim Bakker being a homosexual thing. I don't know that he was, but I was having dinner with a friend of mine at her father's house. And my friend, this was 1987 when Jim and Tammy were being, destroyed basically by Jerry Falwell. And Jim, my friend told her father, Steve was interviewed by Tammy Faye Bakker just 18 months ago, and his father said, "Oh, really? Well, so do you think that Jim Bakker is gay?" And I said, "Well, my gay friends and I have talked about that, and we've decided that no self-respecting homosexual would let a woman wear makeup like that." My friend's father said right away, "Well, that's just the point, isn't it? He wasn't a self-respecting homosexual."
There you go.
That's funny. Interesting.
Smart father.
Well, and she has, since your interview, so she did the interview with you. You were able to explain to her what you're dealing with. And it really did kind of break down some stigmas about HIV and AIDS. Is that right?
Oh, it did. And about gay issues. It was the first time a televangelist had done such a positive, affirming interview. And she got in a lot of trouble for it. She was crucified for doing that.
Is that what you were talking about with Falwell?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Falwell brought them down, I'm told.
Oh, he was such a dirtbag.
Her son, their son, Jim and Tammy's son, Jay Bakker, is a friend of mine, and he's told me that my interview with her changed not only her but the whole family. Wow. And she started bringing Jay and his sister Tammy Sue to MCCs, to LGBT events, pride parades. She even brought them to hospitals and hospices to visit people with AIDS. And Jay told me it changed him, because of what transpired between me and Tammy.
See, and this is so beautiful. You got the calling to do what you did. You ended up on that show. If it were someone else, you never know if the person would have handled the interview as well, but you were able to really represent in this beautiful, open-hearted way and change people's lives. That's great. Testimony to you, Steve. That's huge.
Yeah, I all through the years, I've had people come up to me every once in a while, and actually quite often, and say things like, I was 12 years old when your interview with Tammy Faye was on TV, and my mother always had PTL on, and I was 12 and I was really grappling with, whether I would live, whether I would kill myself.
Wow.
And I decided not to because of your interview. I decided I could be gay and Christian. And so thank you. And
that's amazing.
I've had all kinds of people tell me similar kinds of things,
I just saw suicide rates for people who are gay. It's crazy. Maybe we can insert statistics because it's
right.
Yeah, especially
it's
it's
better now.
mental health month too.
Oh,
And that was one of my questions was mentally, now that you've kind of you went from death's door a couple times, right? Because you got well and then you got sick again.
yeah.
It's got to do a number on you mentally.
Yeah. I would think so.
Understatement of the year. Do you
Yeah.
have advice for people who, because now that we're looking at the time of COVID and people have lost loved ones or are dealing with sickness themselves, it's very similar, this whole pandemic kind of feeling. And then
Sure.
people that are against it, this division, it's kind of crazy.
And even Allison Ingram, your good friend, I'm sorry, Joey, gets so excited, but she was bringing up the relation to the pandemic and what it was like early AIDS and it being very similar. Anyway, sorry.
So just curious if you have advice for people going through things. What was it that kept you kind of going, or what did you go through? I can't imagine.
Well, my doctor, when she diagnosed me with the stage 4 lymphoma and KS and AIDS, she told me, if there's going to be 1 in a million people that survive AIDS, why not believe that you're that one and act accordingly? And I bought it. I took it. I ran with it.
What was her name?
Alexandra Levine. And she's a top-notch scientist and researcher. She was the head researcher. I don't know what you call them, but she was the in charge of the Surroman trials, the now notorious Surroman trials that I was on. And anyway, and then she also said, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to stay alive long enough for us to find a way to manage this disease. She didn't say cure. I remember back in '84, she said, we'll find a way to manage it someday. I don't know about cure, but we'll manage it. And they have, and I did stay alive.
That is so smart. That gave you the shred of hope, probably.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's what when I got well in '87, my denomination, the MCC denomination, made me the field director of AIDS ministry for the entire denomination. And I started traveling all over the world to all these different MCCs and teaching and preaching about hope in the face of hopelessness.
Wow. Okay, now where does the fairy wand come in? There's the Smithsonian has your fairy wand.
Yes,
because
I was honored a couple of years ago that the Smithsonian asked for my work, a lot of what I'd written and resources I developed and that sort of thing. And I thought, I carried not this fairy wand, but I carried a fairy wand just like it, only pink. To all the places I preached and taught and lectured. And I would hold this up and say, remember Peter Pan, where Peter teaches us that fairies are dying because people don't believe in fairies anymore. Well, a lot of good fairies are dying from AIDS. And this is to remind you to believe in yourself as a good fairy, to believe in each other as good fairies, so that you believe enough so that you will do the work of healing. And whether you heal into life or heal into death, I don't know. But if you do the work of healing, amazing things will happen, even as you approach death. You know, and in my work as a hospice chaplain, at the AIDS hospice here in Elysian Park, I would help people die. I found I had a great gift. I mean, I know what it's like to be on my deathbed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a way of understanding people who were dying that not many have. And so I was able to bring that to the bedsides of people who were dying. And, you know, and people believe different things about what happens at death. And it was not my job to try and persuade them of, you know, one thing or another, but to learn what they believed and try to support that belief with hope. For instance, if people believe that death is the end, that's it, kaput, over. Hope for them means that they're finally going to be out of pain, that the pain will be over, the suffering will be through. And, you know, of course, the traditional beliefs in heaven and hell that a lot of people in our culture buy into. You know, I had any number of guys on their deathbed say, I'm going to hell, I know it because I'm gay.
Oh.
So I would try to help them change their mind about that.
Good.
And understand that they were loved, and
Good.
that, God loved them, and they would be fine,
Right.
even at death.
What was the harder one to change? Was it it must be that, to change the mind of someone who believes they're going to hell versus someone who just feels like they're an atheist and poof.
Yeah.
Or a Catholic with purgatory, right? I've heard that's just
Right.
nightmare.
Well, you know, that was hard because that is so deeply ingrained in people. And, you know, it's been said that the God you believe in is the God that you learned about at your mother's knees when you were 3.
Wow.
And that deep down inside, that's the God that you really believe in.
Wow.
And so, you know, for people to just change their mind,
Yeah, not going to happen.
it wasn't going to happen, but I could help them by being present with them with love, with the kind of love that I experienced in death,
Steve.
looking in their eyes,
Oh,
being with them and seeing them and letting them see me.
You
that's
are an
amazing.
angel. You're an angel on this earth.
You really are.
No, I don't
You're
know.
a fairy. We'll say.
I'm a good fairy.
You're a good fairy.
It's a very good fairy.
Oh,
Yay!
I'm a fairy.
So we get to see you portrayed in a film that I
Yeah.
looked up on IMDb. It's supposed to come out September 2021 this year.
September 24th of 2021. Yes.
Wow.
And you could talk about it now because we're going to interview Steve before and he couldn't talk about it. So I'm so excited you can talk about it.
Yes, yes. So tell us the
Yeah.
process and are you excited? Have you seen anything?
Well, I didn't know about it until Jay Bakker, Jim and Tammy's son, told me a year or so ago that there was going to be a film starring Jessica Chastain that would feature my interview.
Okay, can you say who is she? What is she from? So all the viewers know.
Jessica Chastain. A lot of people know her from her Academy Award win for Best Actress in Zero Dark 30. Miss Sloane is another one that a lot of people have seen that love her in that. She does a lot of very challenging kind of characters, and she's a great actress. I think has had 4 Oscar nominations, I believe, and 2 wins.
Yeah. Beautiful redhead, right?
Beautiful redhead. She's
gorgeous.
She was in Terrence Malick's Tree of Life, and she's just done a ton of stuff. And
look her up, everyone.
Yeah.
Look her up.
And Andrew Garfield, I saw he was in that.
Yes, he's playing Jim Bakker.
Yep, the amazing Spider-Man himself. So
And
So,
Vincent D'Onofrio is playing the villain, Jerry Falwell.
oh my
I don't know
God.
if he's the villain in the movie, but he's the one that brings him down,
Yeah.
brings the empire down. And Randy Havens plays me.
That
I
is
love it.
crazy. So do you have an idea of where you are in the storyline? Did they tell you anything?
Jessica tweeted me privately that my interview was the main center of the film.
Wow.
What that means, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a script, but she told me that she decided to do this movie because of my interview.
Wow.
Oh,
and it's so
that gave me chills.
And she's a
Yeah.
producer of it, so she put it right there in the middle.
Amazing.
Apparently. So
I mean, it's such a pivotal thing for so many people, and it turned Christianity probably upside down. And
sure did.
yeah, so
I've had,
it's a
yeah,
great story.
yeah. I've had people tell me who worked at PTL back then that everybody was talking about it for like 2 years.
Wow.
And
What's PTL?
praise the Lord, PTL Network. It was
The
Jimmy
Bakkers.
Tammy's 24 hours satellite network.
And they were freaking huge. They
Yeah.
were huge, huge, huge. Like, I don't
They
know
were
if people understand.
Yeah, they were the largest, the richest, the biggest televangelists in the world at that time. And they had the largest audience. They had the most bucks. They built a water park to go along with the timeshare condominiums that they built right outside the studio. I mean, it was all called Heritage Village USA. And that's one of the reasons why Jim got in a lot of trouble, was for selling
money.
more timeshares than there were.
Okay.
Wow. And then,
Defrauding people.
do you happen to know how many people saw that interview with you
I
and
have
Tammy?
no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure it was millions.
Yeah,
Oh, and I
they
saw
said billions.
somewhere you had the only copy of it. Is that right?
I
For
did.
a while. Yeah.
And I was fortunate that one of the MCC pastors in I think she was in Fort Worth or Arlington, Texas. She watched Jim and Tammy every morning, and when she saw that I was going to be on it, she put in a VHS tape and recorded it and sent it to me. And if it weren't for that, we wouldn't have it.
You're kidding.
Wow.
They didn't
Yeah,
record at the time their own show? That's crazy. They didn't record their own show
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sure
network.
they did, but when PTL fell, everything was lost.
Wow.
Probably in the hands of the FBI somewhere in some closet.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
this is amazing
Yeah.
that you were instrumental in the shift in a lot of people's lives just from that interview. And
had
good
no
for her
idea.
too.
I had no idea either. I mean, I remember coming home from the interview itself that day, and my neighbor Lucia came over, and we sat there and laughed uproariously about my having gone on Tammy Faye's house party. And I told her, oh my God, I did a terrible job. I should have done this. I should have said that. I shouldn't have said this. And oh my God, I was so embarrassed about it. I'm so glad nobody will ever see it except
Oh my God. And look
nobody
where it's
I know
led
will
you.
ever see it. Yeah, I know.
And
here we
Jessica
are.
Chastain is now, oh my God, that's so crazy.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
And Tammy Faye has become an icon of sorts in the gay community too.
absolutely.
Was it because of
I
that?
love that.
That was the beginning. That was the beginning of it. And people don't know my name generally, but they know that Tammy Faye interviewed this gay pastor with AIDS way back in the 80s. And so I don't know where I was going with that.
That was iconic without.
Oh yeah, and she became iconic after that, because after that interview, as I said, she started taking her children around to gay events and to the MCCs and hospices and that sort of thing. And then when PTL fell, it was the gay community that embraced her and apparently helped her survive all of that. and she became a cult figure, the grand marshal of LGBT pride parades. And
Yeah.
Look at that.
And wasn't there,
she
she
had-
was in Palm Springs or something, and I know there's a big gay community there, and yeah.
exactly. And she had a TV show with talk show with Jim J. Bullock, who was
I love that.
openly gay, flamboyantly
Mhm.
gay man.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And so she I mean, she became iconic, and it all started with that interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll look for that. That's The Eyes of Tammy Faye, with her big eyelashes, of course, and the campy makeup, which I'm sure goes well with her singing and dancing and her championing of LGBTQ stuff. That's great.
Yeah.
So what else can we look for you? Where can we find you? You've got
Oh well, my goodness. I'm being interviewed all over the place these
I
days.
know you have. I looked up your
BBC and
list.
NPR, and oh my God.
It's
Oh my
amazing.
God,
Yes.
Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, and they all want to talk about Jim and Tammy for the most part. And
Really?
yeah. And I don't know why this resurgence in interest in her right now with the movie and all these interviews. The interviews have nothing to do with the movie, but they still want to talk about Tammy Faye.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so
But what do you want to talk about? Because you have a book you just wrote. I'm
Yes.
imagining you would
I'm
want to.
working on my memoir. I'm on my third draft.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think I'm finally getting it. I spent COVID writing this.
Yes, I can't believe you were doing it every day.
Every day. I would sit
Wow.
Monday through Friday or Saturday sometimes too.
And you did not leave the house. You were a COVID, you stayed locked in.
I was locked down. I was locked down.
Is your health, are you still immunocompromised, or how are you now?
Somewhat, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm very healthy for someone who's had AIDS for 40 years.
Yeah.
I'm very healthy. And considering what I went through, I got very sick again in 2012. And that's when I had my last 3 near-death experiences.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I was very sick with pancreatitis and a whole bunch of other things. And very near, and anyway, I was telling a reporter about this and how I kept coming back. And she said, if it's so wonderful, why do you keep coming back? And I just blurted out without thinking about it, because I love life.
Oh,
I don't want to miss anything.
That's
and
it.
you're helping so many people too.
Well, that's a lovely thing that's happened. But I love singing and dancing with the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles, and I love all of my friends that I meet on Zoom and all over the place. And I mean, it's just remarkable. And I'm so grateful today for the good health, the fact that I survived. I mean, each new birthday is a triumph. I wasn't supposed to see 33, so
Yeah.
69 feels pretty damn good.
That's right. I know. 1985 to now. Amazing. What a beacon of hope you are. You really are. And Julianne talks so highly of you. She's been
I love
talking about
you.
you forever. It's amazing. And just to see you and your community, that's so wonderful. I love it. What a
We
story.
love Steve. Everybody loves Steve. We're just so lucky to have you here. Thank you for doing
I
this.
know. Thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome. I'm so
Now,
glad.
do you have a website or anywhere you'd like to send people to watch for your book coming out, or?
Well,
kind of-
I don't really. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and people can find me there. I need to get more of a presence out there.
Now, are you still preaching at MCC?
Occasionally.
Okay.
Occasionally. Yeah. I preached at Jay Bakker's church a few weeks ago.
Nice.
He invited me to preach at his church, which is in Seattle, but of course, we can go to
Virtual.
churches all over the world now. And I preached right here.
Wow.
At my laptop.
I love it.
And it was fantastic. I mean, full circle kind of experience to have him introduce me, and then
Oh.
to get to talk about what that interview meant to me. quick story that I know we're running out of time, or have run out of time,
You're
but
fine. No.
okay, all right. Well,
No time limit.
after the Tammy Faye Bakker interview, which was in November, I got sicker and sicker and sicker with the Suramin side effects. I went blind. I was paralyzed on the left side of my body. I lost all my hair all over my body, and I wasted away to nothing but a skeleton with skin again. And everybody was convinced that I was dying. My cancers were still in complete remission, but everybody was convinced I was dying. Well, Tammy Faye Tammy Faye had sent me her albums, which were on cassette tapes in those days. And she sent me these cassette tapes with her albums of singing all these Christian hymns and everything. And most of it was like, but there was this one song she sang, which really engaged me and got me in my heart. And it was, "Don't give up on the brink of a miracle. Don't give up on the brink of a miracle. Don't give in, God is still on the throne. Don't give up on the brink of a miracle. Don't give up, remember you're not alone." And I sang that with her over and over and over. And I sang it by myself over and over and over again. And I got my miracle. I started to get well. And I was well for 20 years after that.
Aw.
Yeah.
I love that. There's got to be healing in music and connection with people, and that's part of your true heart. So, oh my
A
gosh.
reminder of your near-death experience. I mean, that was what you knew to be true. I'm going to make meaning out of that, as you had this near-death experience, and that was it. You're never alone, and we're not alone ever. And it's so hard to remember that sometimes.
What's really important is the connection of the heart, connection to the heart.
How do we do that, Steve? Will you give us a little of your ministry? How do we we're so caught up in our lives and our craziness, and now we're going back into the world?
Well, people who are still wearing masks, or people who aren't wearing masks, you look in people's eyes and you try to see them, and just focus on loving the person you see in their eyes, that soul. And that way you can engage with a homeless person who may have been asking you for money. You can look in their eyes and see the human being in there and love them.
What about someone you really don't like and that has wronged you? What do you do with?
Well,
I know this is a hard question, but I really do wonder when someone, that's the hardest one.
It's true. I think that it's important to realize that at the end, you want to feel peace with everyone. And it's important to realize your part in why you don't get along with that person or why you don't like them. You look at your own part in that. My mother and I have had, she's gone now, but she and I had a lot of difficulty in our relationship in the later years of her life. And, I had to realize that it was hard for her to have me for a son. It was really hard for her with all of my frailties and my humanity and all of that. And that helped me love her and be with her as she died. I was there with her for the last 10 days. And that's where I made amends to her, and so I was able to be there and love her, and I hope she felt that love. But what was important was that I felt loving towards her,
Mhm.
And I made those amends, and that gave me peace about our relationship.
That's
Beautiful.
important.
And that's the forgiveness and seeing the humanity in everybody. Good for you. It's
Yeah.
hard sometimes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, Steve, you're an inspiration. You're a beautiful person. You're famous. And,
Almost.
and you have gorgeous hair.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
natural.
That's
right.
what's really important.
That's the most important.
He's wagging it in the air, waving it in the air. If you guys want to see this, we are going to post this on YouTube. So we'll put everything in our show notes too. I'm going to list your bio because it's so impressive. The awards you've won, you've been with presidents. I mean, you've been so recognized, and we're honored you're with us. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be with you. I know my friend Allison Arngrim had a great time being on your show. She just really enjoyed it and said to say hi to you.
Oh, good.
Oh,
yes.
we love her.
She brought me some homemade apple pie today.
Of course she did. Was she wearing a bonnet too? This is Nellie Olson we're talking about.
Nellie
So
yeah, no, she wasn't wearing a bonnet.
okay.
But she was wearing a mask that said, that had a picture of her as Nellie Olson, and with the caption, "What would Nellie do?"
I love it. Yeah.
That became a huge meme recently.
Yeah,
what would Nellie do? Yeah. She had a resurgence. Oh, what a beautiful person. And she was a big part of the AIDS movement. That's how she met you originally.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. AIDS Project Los Angeles back in the 80s.
Wow.
Amazing. And you married her and her husband, right?
I did. I officiated, and
I love that.
At the end, I pronounced them, "Poof, you're a husband and wife."
With a scary one.
And I threw fairy dust over them.
You married by a fairy. I love it.
Married by a fairy. That's right.
A good fairy.
Oh,
thank
amazing.
you, Steve.
All right. Well, everybody.
So
yes, go ahead, Weens.
Any last words from anyone? Any last stories? Any last anything?
Well, do you want me to sing the Medical Anomaly song?
Yes,
if you want. Yeah, that would be a great closer for us.
I love singing that.
Okay.
You know, and I sang this for the Gay Men's Chorus of LA. We do a retreat every year, or we did before COVID, and so I sang this one year as my talent in the No Talent show.
I love it.
Here it goes. I am the very model of a medical anomaly. I've had KS, lymphoma, hepatitis, thrush, and CMV, bacterial pneumonia, and adrenal insufficiency. All this and more because I caught a virus that's called HIV. And then I took an antiviral just like chemotherapy. It made me sick. My hair fell out. I suffered neurologically. But hey, it worked. It stopped all of the HIV activity. My lymphoma's in remission, and there is no more KS to see. Lymphoma's in remission, and there is no more KS. Lymphoma's in remission, and there is no more KS to see. Lymphoma's in remission, and there is no more KS to see. Now, many years have passed, and I'm as healthy as a horse can be. It's certainly a miracle for anyone with faith to see. But still in journals medical, in science and oncology, I am the very model of a medical anomaly.
Woohoo! Everybody, Steve Pieters. We love him.
We love you. That just made me cry, but it's joy also.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's
one of the members of the chorus who's had AIDS for a long time too came up to me afterwards and said, "AIDS in Gilbert and Sullivan? Well, how did you ever put those two together?" Well,
it worked for you. It works.
That's
amazing. Well, you are a miracle. You're a medical anomaly, and we love you so much, Steve.
We're proud you came on our show. Thank you so much. I hope to meet you in real life real soon.
I hope so.
When things open up. I'm up there all the time. So yay. All right. You too. And everyone can find us on mouseandweens.com. That's our main hub. Everywhere at Mouse and Weens. Then also find us over on Mouse and Weens. We have a Patreon site. We would love for you to visit the wonderful Steve Pieters. I will link everything in our show notes. And we appreciate all of you listeners, and we appreciate all of our guests. And you, I love you, Weens. You too, Steve.
I love you.
Have a lovely evening, everyone. Goodbye.
And I look into your eyes before we go and see your soul. Goodbye.
Bye, boss. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to a podcast of the Podfix Network. Discover more audible gems like this at podfixnetwork.com. Make sure to catch up-to-the-minute network shenanigans by following @Podfix on Twitter, official_Podfix on Instagram, @Podfix Network on Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to Podfix Presents wherever you choose to find podcasts. The Podfix Network, artist owned and loved.